When you feel unloved, there's a quiet kind of pain that creeps in, not loud, not dramatic, but heavy. You begin to question everything. You wonder if there's something wrong with you, if you're simply not enough. You start replaying moments in your life when you reached out. It begins with a loss, only to be met with coldness, silence, or disinterest. It doesn't take long before your mind starts building a narrative. Maybe I'm not lovable. And once a thought takes root, it grows like a weed. Unnoticed at first, then entangling everything you try to do, everything you try to become. But here's the truth I need you to understand. You feeling unloved does not mean you are unlovable. Let that sink in. Your emotions are valid. They're real and they deserve to be felt. But they are not always the truth. Emotions are messengers, not verdicts. They can be shaped by exhaustion, by rejection, by a single often comment from someone who doesn't even understand your soul. You're interpreting your experience through a lens clouded by pain, and pain is a poor translator of your worth. Tony once said something powerful. A loneliness isn't the absence of people, it's the absence of connection. And sometimes you can be surrounded by people and still feel unloved. Begins with a loss. That doesn't mean you're broken. It means the world hasn't always known how to hold the kind of heart you carry. It means your depth may have gone unnoticed by those too shallow to swim in it. That's not a flaw, that's a reflection of your uniqueness. See, we grow up internalizing love as something we have to earn. Smile more, stay quiet, do what they say, sacrifice your needs, make others comfortable. Somewhere along the way, you begin to believe that love is a reward for good behavior. That if you perform well enough, look the right way, act the right way, succeed enough, serve enough, you'll finally be worthy of it. But that's a lie. Real love isn't a prize. It's not something you win by being perfect. It's not conditional. If someone withholds love from you unless you shrink, mold, or distort yourself to fit their expectations, that's not love. With a loss, that's control. And if no one has told you this before, let me be the first. You were lovable the moment you took your first breath. You were worthy before you ever did anything for anyone. You do not have to hustle for love. You do not have to earn the right to be seen. The people who can truly love you will love you as you grow, not just when you comply. But we forget that. Especially when love is withheld. Especially when we're ghosted, dismissed, ignored. Especially when we've given everything to people who never bothered to see the beauty in our effort. You might think, if they didn't love me, maybe I'm the problem. No. Maybe they weren't capable. Maybe they were fighting battles you never saw. With a loss. Maybe they were too wounded to recognize someone who would have helped them heal. Whatever the case, vous or you are not the problem for having loved deeply. The world is better because of hearts like yours. And here's something else. Just because someone didn't love you the way you needed doesn't mean no one ever will. One person's inability to value you is not universal proof of your unworthiness. With a loss, you've simply been trying to speak the language of love to people who never learned how to listen. That's not your fault. But it is your responsibility to stop letting those experiences define your story. You can't. It begins with a loss. You keep rewriting your identity around people who couldn't see your soul. At some point, you have to separate how others treated you from how you treat yourself. Stop carrying their silence like it's a mirror. It isn't. With a loss, their silence doesn't say anything about who you are. It only reveals what they could not appreciate. You are not unlovable. You are not invisible. You are not too much. You are not hard to love. You are someone who loves deeply, feels deeply, and cares in a way that's rare. And that's not a weakness, that's a superpower. But you must start seeing it as such. When the world feels cold, go where the warmth lives. Inside you, you have the ability to generate love, even in the absence of it. The world may not always offer it to you, with a loss, but that doesn't mean you can't create it for yourself. Your worth doesn't disappear because someone failed to notice it. Just like Ost, the sun doesn't lose its light when clouds cover it. Stop waiting for someone else to tell you what you already know deep down. You are already enough. When you've been feeling unloved for a long time, you don't just feel empty. You start feeling like love itself is a distant memory, something you used to feel, something you used to believe in. But somewhere along the way, it slipped out of your hands, you gave it away. Piece by piece, moment by moment, to people who couldn't hold it. People who didn't know what to do with the kind of heart you offered. And now here you are, wondering why you feel so drained, so unseen, so disconnected from your own spirit. But listen to me closely. Your love didn't disappear, but it's not gone. It's not wasted. It's not destroyed. It's misplaced. You gave it away, yes. You gave it freely because that's who you are. Because you believed in others. Because you had hope. And maybe they didn't return it. Maybe they didn't appreciate it. Maybe they used it, misunderstood it, or walked away from it. But that doesn't mean your love is lost. It's still yours. And you have every right, every power to take it back. That begins with a loss. Now, I'm not saying you need to become cold or bitter. I'm not telling you to stop loving. That's not the answer. The answer is to reclaim the love you gave away to people who didn't know how to carry it. Not with anger, but with understanding. Not with spite, with a loss, but with clarity. You loved from a pure place. You gave because that's your nature. But now it's time to redirect that energy inward. So many people are walking around trying to fill a hole inside themselves with external love, external validation, external attention. They're waiting for someone to choose them so they can finally choose themselves. But that doesn't work. It never works. You cannot outsource self-love. You cannot outsource peace. And you cannot feel whole if all love is still tied up in memories, in people, in places where it was never truly held. Think about it. How many people in your life did you love with everything you had? People you encouraged, showed up for, waited for, forgave, believed in. Begins a loss, even when they didn't return the effort. And when they left, or faded, or stopped showing up, you didn't just lose them. You lost a part of yourself in the process. You started wondering, was it something I did? Was I not enough? Why did they walk away from someone who loved them so purely? But what if I told you it wasn't about you? What if I told you they weren't ready? That they weren't capable? Begins with a loss, that they didn't have the capacity to receive the kind of love you were offering. Not because your love was too much, but because they were too closed, too scared, too unfamiliar with something real. You didn't lose your love. You invested it in places that couldn't return it. And now it's time to collect that investment. Not in bitterness, but in self-honor. Take back the words you whispered to comfort them and use them to comfort yourself. Take back the patience you had for their chaos and use it to sit with your own emotions. Take back the faith you had in their potential and redirect it toward your own growth. Because that love wasn't wasted. It was misdirected. And now, it's coming home. When you reclaim your love, you stop chasing people who left you confused. You stop trying to prove your worth to those who never saw it. You stop repeating the cycle of self-abandonment just to feel chosen. And you begin to realize that the one you were always waiting for was you. You were waiting for your own attention, your own affection, your own recognition. And now you're ready to give it. This is what healing looks like. It's not a loss. It's not dramatic. It's subtle. It's you waking up one day and deciding, I'm the loss and going to be good to myself. It's choosing to speak to yourself kindly with a loss. It's showing up for yourself with the tenderness you once gave to people who couldn't meet you halfway. With a loss, it's looking in the mirror and no longer seeing someone who's too much or not enough, but someone who's just right. When you reclaim your love, you stop defining yourself by the way others treated you. You no longer see yourself as the abandoned one, the rejected one, the one who was left behind. You start to see yourself as the one who loved courageously, and that is never weakness. That is power. With a loss, there is nothing more beautiful than someone who can love others deeply, and then learn to love themselves just as fiercely. Your heart didn't break because it was weak. It broke because it was open. And now you get to rebuild it. Not around someone else's absence, but around your own presence. Take your love back. Bring it home. Give it to the one who always deserved it most, you. There comes a point where you have to ask yourself a hard question. Why are you still chasing love from places that keep denying you? Why are you bending over backward to be enough for people who barely meet you halfway? Why are you holding your breath, waiting for someone to finally say, with a loss, you matter, when deep down you already know that you do? The truth is, we've been conditioned to believe that love and worth come from outside of us, from approval, from applause, from someone choosing us. We grow up thinking that if someone compliments us, we're beautiful. If someone stays, we're valuable. If someone wants us, then we must be enough. But what happens when they leave? When they stop noticing? When they go silent? If your worth was built on their validation, what are you left with? You're left with a shaky identity. One that rises and falls with other people's opinions, with a loss. One that never feels safe someone else is affirming it. And that's where the real damage begins. Not when someone fails to love you, but when you start believing that their failure means you're unworthy of love at all. But here's the truth, and I want you to hear this loud and clear. You do not need to be seen by others to see yourself. You don't need someone else to tell you who you are. That's your job now. You get to define your own worth with a loss. You get to write your own story. And the moment you stop looking outward for that validation is the moment everything begins to change. Because the kind of love you've been chasing, the kind that fills your lungs, steadies your soul, and gives you peace, it doesn't live in someone else's hands. It lives inside you. That int begins with a loss, and it's been waiting for you to stop running from yourself long enough to see it. Think about how much energy you've spent trying to prove yourself. Proving you're good enough, smart enough, beautiful enough, lovable, performing, pleasing, shrinking, editing yourself for others, and begins with a loss, hoping that if you say the right thing, wear the right thing, act the right way, they'll finally love you the way you need to be loved, with a loss. But love that must be earned through performance isn't real, it's conditional. And conditional love is a transaction, not a connection. You were not born to be a transaction. You were born to be whole, to be seen as you are, not as you pretend to be. And that begins when you stop turning yourself into a product for other people's approval and start turning inward, toward your own truth. Somewhere inside you is a version of yourself that's not performing, not chasing, not begging, just existing. And that version of you is already enough. That version of you is already lovable, already valuable, already worthy of the kind of life you dream about. But you have to come home to it. You have to stop looking for yourself in other people's eyes. You have to understand that love, real love, begins when you stop chasing and start choosing. You start choosing yourself, choosing peace over performance, choosing self-respect over temporary attention, choosing depth over approval. When you make that choice, you stop settling for being tolerated and start requiring that you be valued. It's not about arrogance. It's about self-respect. It's about finally recognizing that the person who always supposed to love you most was you. You're not here to convince anyone of your worth. That's not your job. Your job is to honor your soul, to show up for yourself in the moments when no one else does, to sit in the silence and still know, with a loss, I am enough. When you stop seeking validation outside of yourself, you begin to heal the parts of you that were taught to believe love must be earned. You stop being a reflection of how others treat you and start becoming a reflection of how you treat yourself. You learn to see rejection not as a failure, but as redirection, not as proof of your unworthiness, but as clarity about where your energy no longer belongs. And in that shift, you find something powerful. You find freedom. Freedom from the exhausting game of comparison, freedom from people-pleasing, freedom from the need to be chosen. You become your own home, your own your own source of love. And once that happens, everything changes, not because the world suddenly becomes kinder with a loss, but because you become unshakable. So if you're feeling unloved right now, let this be your turning point. Stop chasing. Turn inward. With a loss, become the love you've been waiting for. You've always had it within you. All that's left is to believe it. One of the hardest things to face when you feel unloved isn't just the silence from the world around you. It's the voice inside your own head. That quiet, persistent voice that whispers, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe something really is wrong with me. And over time, that voice becomes louder, more convincing, more familiar. It stops sounding like doubt and starts sounding like truth. With a loss, you don't just hear it, you start believing it. You carry it with you everywhere like a shadow. But here's what most people never tell you. That voice wasn't born in you. It was built, piece by piece, moment by moment, by every experience where love was withheld, where affection was conditional, where you felt invisible. That voice, that inner critic, is not your intuition, it's a script, a survival mechanism created by pain. When you were lost, when you're a child and someone important to you ignored your needs, dismissed your feelings, or criticized you for being yourself, you didn't have the tools to question them. You didn't know how to say, maybe they were wrong. You only knew how to survive. So instead of blaming them, you Turgins weren't inward. You told yourself, if I change, if I improve, if I do everything right, maybe they'll love me. That's how the inner critic was born. It started out trying to protect you, telling you not to be too loud, not to be too emotional, not to take up too much space. It tried to keep you small so you wouldn't get hurt. But now, years later, that same voice is still running the show, still repeating the same story, still convincing you that being unloved is your fault. That maybe if you had been more this or less that, they would have stayed. But the time has come to see the truth. That voice isn't wisdom, it's a wound, and wounds don't get to define your worth. You've outgrown the story that says you have to earn love. You don't need to edit yourself into someone more acceptable. You don't have to hustle for your own dignity. You are enough without anyone's permission. You are worthy without needing proof. You don't need to be anyone else. You just need to be whole in who you already are. And I know, saying that is easy. Believing it, especially when you've been taught otherwise for so long, is a different story. But healing starts with awareness. When that voice starts creeping in, you don't need to fight it, but you do need to stop feeding it. You need to start asking, whose voice is that? Really? Because of the time, it's not even yours. It's your mother's criticism, your father's absence, your ex's rejection, with a loss, your friend's betrayal, society's unrealistic expectations. And yet here you are, repeating it to yourself like it's your own reflection. It's not. You have the power to rewrite the narrative, to stop identifying with the pain and start identifying with the strength it took to survive. You have to become the voice you always needed to hear. You have to be the one who says, you're doing your best. You didn't deserve that. You are still lovable, even on your worst days. Every time you choose to speak to yourself with compassion, you weaken the grip of the inner critic with a loss. Every time you replace judgment with grace, shame with understanding, fear with gentleness, you reclaim a part of yourself that had been lost in the chaos. Begins with a loss. You don't need the world's approval to treat yourself with kindness. You don't need closure from the ones who hurt you before you give yourself peace. You can choose right now, today, to stop living in reaction to what they said or didn't say. You can create a new environment inside you, one where love isn't something you chase, but something you create. And the irony is, with a loss, the moment you stop trying to be who others want you to be and start honoring who you actually are, the real healing begins. The kainos that doesn't depend on someone else showing up. The kind that doesn't disappear when someone walks away. With a loss, the kind that feels like coming home to yourself after years of feeling like a stranger. So, the next time that voice tells you you're not enough, don't try to argue with it. Just recognize it for what it is. Old pain in a new disguise. And then answer it with the truth you've always needed. I am enough, even if no one else sees it. There's something quietly powerful that happens when you realize you can sit with your own pain and not run from it. When you stop distracting yourself, when you stop pretending you're fine, when you finally just let yourself feel. For a long time, with a loss, you might have thought that the goal was to escape the loneliness, to get rid of the H, to find something, or someone that would make it all go away. But that mindset keeps stuck in a cycle of avoidance. It convinces you that healing is somewhere out there, in the next person, the next distraction, a loss, the next success. And so you keep chasing and running and breaking down in quiet moments because no one ever taught you how to be with yourself, with a loss. But here's the truth you need to hear. New healing doesn't begin when you feel better. With it begins you stop hiding from what hurts. When you're brave enough to sit in the silence. When you're honest enough to admit, yes, I feel unloved right now. Yes, I'm grieving something I never even got. Yes, with a loss, I've spent years ignoring myself while chasing love from everyone else. You can't heal what you refuse to feel. With a loss, you can't grow through what you won't even acknowledge. And I get it. It's uncomfortable. It's heavy. With a loss. But so is carrying unspoken pain for the rest of your life. So is performing happiness. So is pretending to be okay when you're breaking apart inside. Real healing asks you to go deeper than the surface. It asks you to stop numbing, stop suppressing, stop using business as an excuse. It asks you to be still with yourself long enough to hear what your heart has been trying to say. And maybe, it just may be whispering this whole time, I miss you, because when you were so focused on being lovable to others, you forgot to love yourself. You left parts of you behind just to be accepted. You dimmed your light just to keep the peace. You tolerated treatment that made you feel small just to stay connected. But those versions of you, they're still waiting to be acknowledged, waiting to be held. That's where healing begins. Not in some perfect destination, but in the daily decision to be honest with yourself. To say, I'm hurting, and that's okay. I feel lost begins with a loss, and that's part of the journey. I don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to show up for myself anyway. And that's the turning point with a loss. When you stop needing to be fixed and start learning how to be present with yourself. When you stop waiting for someone else to come and love you the way you've always needed. And realize that maybe you were always the one who could. You begin to reparent the wounded parts of your heart, the parts that didn't get comfort or reassurance or unconditional acceptance. You start giving yourself the kindness you used to beg others for, the patience you showed to people who couldn't meet you halfway. You turn it inward. The encouragement you gave away, you whisper it to yourself. And little by little, the loneliness doesn't feel as sharp, because you're no longer abandoning yourself to feel connected to others. You're no longer betraying your truth just to be understood. With a loss, you're learning how to sit with yourself in moments of pain, and instead of judging or running, you're listening. Healing isn't about becoming a version of yourself that no longer feels anything. It's about becoming a version of yourself that's no longer afraid to. It begins with a loss. It's about being able to feel pain without collapsing under it, to feel unloved without forgetting your worth, to feel broken without losing your sense of self. You are not your trauma. You are not your rejection. You are not the people who left you, the love that was denied to you, or the moments that tried to convince you that you're too much or not enough. You are the one who's still standing, still feeling, still showing up. That is strength, that is healing, that is love. So the next time you feel the ache, the next time the silence feels deafening and the sadness creeps in, don't run, don't reach for a distraction, don't pretend it doesn't matter. Sit with it, breathe through it, listen, because within that pain is a message. And if you're quiet enough, with a loss, if you're gentle enough, you just might hear the truth that changes everything. You've always been worthy of love, especially from yourself. There's a moment in every person's life where they wake up and realize that no one is coming to save them. No one is going to hand them the love they've been itching for. No one is going to knock on their door and say, "Here, this is what you've been missing." And that moment, it's terrifying at first. It shakes you. But if you're brave enough to stay with it, if you don't turn away, something incredible begins to unfold. You begin to reclaim your power. You see, with a loss, when you've spent your life waiting for others to validate you, love you, choose you, rescue you, hand over pieces of yourself. You give away your voice. With a loss, your self-worth, your direction. You think that if they choose you, then you'll be okay. But the danger in that thinking is this: what happens when they don't? What happens when the text never comes? When the apology isn't offered? When they forget your birthday? When they love you only in moments and never fully? If you've built your identity on being loved by them, then every act of neglect feels like proof that you're nothing. That's how people lose themselves. Slowly, piece by piece, chasing after people who never had the capacity to hold them. But here's the truth no one tells you. With a loss, you don't need to be rescued. You need to remember who you are. The real breakthrough begins when you stop searching outside of yourself and begin the deep, often uncomfortable, journey inward. When you sit with yourself and ask the hard questions: who am I when no one's clapping? What do I believe about myself when the world goes silent? Where does my value come from, truly? If the answer is still tied to someone else's behavior, then you're still in chains. Because freedom only begins when your value no longer depends on who stays, who leaves, who loves, or who forgets. When your identity is rooted in something deeper, something immovable, then no rejection can steal your peace. No absence can shake your sense of worth. No silence can silence you. This isn't about building walls or becoming cold. It's not about pretending you don't want love. Of course you do. We all do. But you must learn to want love from a place of fullness, not emptiness. You must want connection because it's beautiful, not because you need it to survive. With a loss, because the moment you believe you need someone else to complete you, you've already forgotten your wholeness. Let's be honest, there's a part of you that already knows this. You've seen glimpses of it. Maybe in a moment of solitude where you felt strangely at peace. Maybe in a journal entry that felt like your soul speaking. Maybe in a walk, a cry, a deep breath where you finally stopped running and said, I don't need them to make me enough. I already am. That voice, that's the real you. The self that's been buried under years of self-doubt, emotional abandonment, and the weight of needing to be chosen. That voice has always been there waiting, with a loss, waiting for you to turn down the noise of the world and turn up the volume of your own truth. You are not broken because someone didn't love you right. With a loss, you are not less because someone couldn't see your light. Their inability to love you is not a reflection of your worth, it's a reflection of their capacity. With a loss, and you can't keep shrinking yourself to fit into hearts that were never built to hold you. So what do you do now? You rebuild. You take all the pieces of yourself you gave away. You gather them, you reclaim your voice, your dreams, your dignity. You become your own rescue. You stop waiting for someone to see your worth and start treating yourself like you already know it. Because you do. Deep down, even on your hardest days, you know you were made for more than chasing love. You were made to be love. That means you nourish yourself emotionally, spiritually, physically. You stop over-explaining your worth. You set boundaries, you protect peace, you speak kindly to yourself. With a loss, you rise every day with the intention of showing up for the one person you've abandoned the most, yourself. And that's when the world starts to shift. With a loss, not because the world has changed, but because you have. You're no longer begging. You're no longer chasing. You're no longer waiting. It begins with you're choosing yourself. You're becoming the love you were waiting for. So if you've ever asked, when will someone finally see me? Let the answer be, "Who will?"